Hello, freaks, geeks, degenerates, and basement dwellers. Welcome to the War Zone. I'm Scruffy, and this is Skruffytalez. And we're going to take a look at some various locations along the front line, and Chasiv Yar, especially since Ukraine is pushing back into Chasiv Yar, incredibly enough. So it does appear as if Pokrovsk has had a tremendous strategical impact on the war, being able to tie up so many Russian forces and has been able to grind down the Russian army to a massive extent. So Ukraine can now push back at Kupiansk and potentially even Chasiv Yar. And the Kursk incursion, of course, played a huge role in this, since Russia moved a lot of assets to Kursk that could have been used at Pokrovsk and everything like that. So we're going to take a look at Kursk, how that affected the battlefield, and the importance of Pokrovsk and stuff like that towards the end. So let's get into it. Okie dokie, here we have Andrew Perpetua's map, zooming in on Sumy Oblast, where we can see the Russians are putting pressure on Andriivka here. Is that Russia or Ukraine pushing back? Oh, Ukraine is pushing back in Andriivka. Nice. That's always good. So the Russians, they were, as we know, back at the border here, and since then they've pushed back into Konstantinivka and pushed up on this hill and into Andriivka. But as you can see here, Ukraine is back in Andriivka, pushing back in around the lake here in town. That's encouraging. What else? Russia's trying to link up forces here in Vilcha Lyman outside of Vovchansk. Doesn't seem to be happening though. Ukraine is holding this gap here. Moving down, we obviously have Kupiansk basically more or less liberated by Ukraine. The Russians have been pushed back. They're struggling to hold on to Dorichna, Zapadne. They're trying to move out towards the Oskil through the valley here via Pishane. You can see here multiple Russian artillery strikes, indicating you have a substantial Ukrainian presence in this valley here at Pishane. They are, however, as you can see here, pushing in here. I don't know how Ukrainians here hope to hold on. I mean, it's a narrow sliver of woodlands here between the river and where the Russians are trying to push in. It looks dangerous for the Ukrainians trying to hold on up here. Not ideal. Slow going for the Russians at Lyman here, as we've noted. I mean, they're barely making any headway here. It's dangerous though. It's not far to the Oskil, and if they do manage to reach the river, Lyman is more or less cut off. There's something wrong with my mouse here. Weird. But they're pushing back into Dibrova. Ukraine had pushed them out for a while. Now they're back in, I think. Let's see, was I wrong about this? Yeah, here we can see. Yeah, they're pushing in since a couple of days back. Then we're moving down to the interesting part here, and that is, of course, Chasiv Yar. Take a look at this, going back a couple of days, and then boom, blue. Ukraine is pushing back into the suburbs of Chasiv Yar, and that is really encouraging that the Russians are struggling with this town, Chasiv Yar. And slow going outside of Konstantinivka, due to Ukrainians are holding the line exceptionally well, and the Russian tactics are less than ideal. Moving over here, Pokrovsk and Mironorad still holding. Ukraine is still holding territory in both towns. The Russians are struggling. You can see here though they are managing to reach out to Hrishne, but not without massive effort. And we have, if we go back here, when was that? Well, wrong map. I think that was on Mayakovsk 73. Yeah, here we go. Here you can have Ukrainian presence in and around Mironorad and Pokrovsk. So Ukraine is still obviously in these two towns and causing trouble for the Russians, not letting them consolidate and fortify. Extremely important. And then, of course, Huliapol, Russia seems to have taken parts of the town, but not all of it, and they do seem to struggle pushing out of town. The Ukrainians are still holding down here. Is worth noting. This is not a walk in the park for the Russians trying to push through this town. It has proven to be a proper obstacle. I will admit I thought the river here would be more of an issue for the Russians, but they somehow got across really quickly, made it into town, established a presence, and they have since slowly but surely pushed into town. But as you can see, they are not in full control. And recently, around Salizhnizhne, the Ukrainians did push the Russians back. The Russians were out here, and Ukraine made a move, as you can see here, pushing them back into town. And over here, south of Zaporizhia, the Russians are getting dangerously close, but they are having issues getting past and through Stepnohirsk. It's not under Russian control. And here you can see the Russians are striking Ukrainian vehicles operating in the area. Yeah, that's the front line briefly, but I think it's interesting that we are seeing some Ukrainian pushback here and there. Kupiansk definitely, but now also slightly here in Chasiv Yar, and they are holding still in Pokrovsk and Mirnorad. And we'll see. Syrskyi has said that you can't win if you're only fighting this defensively, hinting, I guess, that Ukraine might try and launch some form of attack in 2026. So we'll see how all of that plays out. But I do think we need to remember that Ukraine is not holding back in this war. They quickly went on the offensive in 2022 to push the Russians back. In 2023, they launched their big offensive during the summer. In 2024, they did attack into Kursk. So they went on the offensive in 2024. And in 2025, while they did not launch a huge attack or offensive along the front line, what they did was plan for a massive attritional battle at Pokrovsk and Mirnorad. So this was their big operation for 2025. So they conducted offensive operations in 22, 23, 24, and decided that 2025 would be a defensive year to try and attrit the Russian forces. And now Syrskyi seems to be hinting that they're going to try and exploit this fact that they had such a successful battle or operation at Pokrovsk, that they might now try and go into offense in 2026, having reduced the Russian capabilities to such an extent that that is once again a good idea for the Ukrainians, so to speak. And you've seen me do this a million times by now, but it's worth repeating that Kursk was sort of successful but did not reach its full potential, and it was more than likely supposed to link up and tie in with the operations at Kursk, at Pokrovsk, forcing the Russians to split their forces between trying to liberate Russian territory and trying to push into the massive meat grinder that is Pokrovsk, or was Pokrovsk. Went so and so. The operations did overlap for a couple of months, but not to the extent that I think the Ukrainians had hoped. So what the Ukrainians did here at Kursk is, of course, they went in here towards Sudzha, and once they took Sudzha, they did spread out a bit around it to try and secure territory and keep the Russians away from Sudzha. Then they, of course, went quickly for Koronevo, and they tried to take Koronevo, which they failed. And then they took the ground surrounding it, and they tried to come up this way and isolate Koronevo from the south. And this is, of course, when things turned for the worse for the Ukrainians. The Russians counterattacked, and they held Koronevo and managed to push out from Koronevo and started to, in the end, force the Ukrainians back. But it's quite obvious to me what the Ukrainians wanted to do. You had the same river coming down here next to Koronevo and Glushkovo all the way out here to the border. And you also had the river here with Sudja, and it goes up this way and comes over here. What the Ukrainians wanted to do, that to me is quite obvious, was to secure Sudja Rayon, Sudja County. If Kursk is a state, then it's divided into counties, rayons. And Sudja, Koronevo and Glushkovo were 3 such rayons. So they wanted to take these 3 rayons and utilize the river same as a defensive barrier, and then hold for as long as possible, forcing the Russians to push in as much troops as needed to liberate Russian territory. And if this took place alongside the battles of Pokrovsk, then of course Russia wouldn't be able to conduct offensive operations anywhere along the front line. And I think the plan was to eventually fall back to Sudja, like we saw that they did, and also fall back and hold Glushkovo, and mounting defenses here where they did have plenty of logistical options in keeping the troops supplied. But like I said, did not go exactly to plan, unfortunately. They did take Sudja, wrong color as always. Sudja, 1 operational goal. They did not take Koronevo, they did not take Glushkovo. So these were failed operational objectives. But they did secure a large section of, god damn it, Sudja Rayon. That was an operational goal, and they did take a large section of Koronevo Rayon, which also was an operational objective. They did not manage to secure territory in Glushkovo Rayon. So they failed with Glushkovo, they failed with Koronevo, they took Sudja, and they took Sudja Rayon and Koronevo Rayon. So not a successful campaign as such, but it did meet certain criteria, and it did cause a lot of issues for the Russians, forced the Russians to move tons of equipment and hundreds of thousands of troops to Kursk. Some of their best units took part in battles. A third of their cab strikes took place in Kursk during the incursion, and Ukraine held territory here for 10 months. And it was quite a successful operation, actually, even if they did not take Koronevo, even if they did not take Glushkovo. But I mean, imagine if they had managed to secure Glushkovo, managed to defend the river. The Russians could only come in from the east and fighting in this narrow gap here. It would have been a massacre, and I mean, the Ukrainians could have held probably to this day in Glushkovo. Wouldn't surprise me at all. So combining this with what happened in Pokrovsk, you can see why what the Ukrainians were after and why they planned for these 2 operations, Kursk and Pokrovsk, to interlink and become a proper proper issue and a problem for the Russians. And then of course you have Sumy, and like I said, months before it even happened, the Ukrainians knew that eventually they would be pushed out, at which point they would have a huge Russian army outside of Sumy Oblast, and the Russians would try and come in. So the Ukrainians just waited for the Russians and had massive defenses in place, and when the Russians pushed in, the Ukrainians fell back to their defensive positions and started counterattacking. So this was a very successful operation, and which affected the entire front line. And eventually, when Ukraine started holding in Pokrovsk and Myrna, remember, they held throughout 2025 and are still holding in Pokrovsk and Myrnorad well into January of 2026. And the Russians actually started moving troops from all over the place. From Zaporizhia, they started moving troops from Kupiansk, which explains why they have lost Kupiansk. They moved troops from Kursk to fight down here. They moved them from Kherson to fight here. Right, so they just moved troops from all over the place to fight at Pokrovsk. So imagine if you had been able to tie up hundreds of thousands of troops up here in Kursk, combined with doing the same here in Pokrovsk. I mean, the front line would have been, they would have stalled completely all along the front line if Ukraine had managed to tie up the Russian army at these two locations. So Pokrovsk has been a massive success, and Kursk reached certain operational goals that had a strategic impact, but did not reach all of the goals. And but it was still somewhat successful, the Kursk incursion. I think it's fair to say. And combining it all, I mean, that is the reason why Russia only took 0.75% of Ukrainian territory in 2025. Not even a percent of Ukrainian territory fell under Russian control in 2025. Similar to what took place in 2024, by the way. And now Syrskyi has said that you can't win a war by only playing defense. You have to attack as well. So chances are that the Ukrainians are hoping that they have attrited the Russian army to such an extent that somewhere along the front line they can begin to push back. And we have seen pushback at Kupiansk and slight pushback, where is it here, at Chasiv Yar. We'll see if the Ukrainians can do something about the pushes here, where the Russians are advancing of late. We'll see if Ukraine can counter that maybe, or if they have some other plan in store for us, or in store for the Russians, that is. So according to Syrskyi, things might be happening in 2026 that the Russians will not be particularly fond of. And that's it. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope I'll see you in the next one. As always, go på marsch, Ukraine, and give them hell.